All right, are there other matters that we need to take up before we bring jurors back in?
Not from the state, Your Honor.
Mr. Arbor, anything further? All right, bailiff, you'll bring jurors, please. Thank you for your patience while we continue to deal with matters outside the presence of the jury. And again, we ask you not to speculate or concern yourself about those matters. They are matters, again, the law requires us to consider outside your presence. Immediately before the lunch recess, the state rested its evidence. So now I turn to the defense and ask, will there be evidence for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the defense calls Kay Broyhill to the stand.
Ma'am, if you would, please stand, place your left hand on the Bible, and raise your right. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Elliott.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Broyhill. I'm going to ask to make sure you're speaking in the microphone so everyone can hear you. Can you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
My name is Kay Broyhill,
And where do you live, Ms. Broyhill?
Hudson, North Carolina.
How are you related to John Broyhill?
I'm his mother.
You said you live in Hudson. We've heard testimony about Lenore. Where is Hudson in relation to Lenore?
It's about 5 miles between the two towns.
Okay. And who do you live with?
My daughter Rebecca and Sara.
Ms. Broyhill, I'd like to start with talking about John's childhood. Where did you live while John was growing up?
Lenore, it was in the country, kind of in Lenore. It was a Lenore address.
And who did you live with then?
My husband and my daughter.
And is John older or younger in relation to his sister?
John's the oldest.
So is you're and your husband's first child?
Yes.
When John was ready to enter school, where did you send him to school?
Harris Chapel Christian Academy.
And we've heard some testimony about Harris Chapel, but can you tell us more about that school?
It's a school that was started by Harris Chapel Baptist Church, and the address for that is Hudson. It's a small Christian school.
Why did you decide to send him there?
I want him to be safe. We attended church, and I felt like that was the best place. Both my children graduated from there.
Did you attend church at Harris Chapel at that time?
No, ma'am.
Where did you attend church?
We went to Whitnall Pentecostal Holiness Church.
And was there a school at Whitnall?
No, ma'am.
Would it be fair to say that your faith was important to you?
Yes.
What drove your decision in particular to send John to a Christian school?
Well, I guess I was overprotective. I'd had 2 miscarriages before I was able to have John, and I was just an overprotective mother. That's just where I wanted him to go. I felt like he would be safe there.
Okay. How did John do in school as he was making his way through Harris Chapel?
He was an A/B student.
What about friends socially?
He had plenty of friends. They all liked him.
Did he get along with his teachers?
Yes.
Were there any problems as he was growing up, going through school at Harris Chapel?
No, ma'am.
What about at home as John was growing up? Were there any problems at home with John?
No, he was always well behaved and laid back, and I always referred to him as Mama's boy because I always made sure I knew where he was at. And
Were you and John close when he was growing up?
yes, yes.
What about when John became a teenager? When he was in his early teenage years, were you still close to him?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Did he have any problems at school? We know did he become rebellious at all?
No, I never had to have any parent-teacher conferences on that account. Just, the normal at the end of the grading period, just parent-teacher conferences.
Did John continue to do well academically at school?
Yes,
And this is you and your husband are at home, correct?
yes,
And John and his sister, you called her Rebecca. Did she go by Becky?
most of the time, yeah.
Okay.
Most everybody called her Becky.
And how much younger is she than John?
About 3.5 years.
Okay. And so all 4 of you were still in the home?
Right, yes, ma'am.
Ms. Broyhill, did there come a time when you decided to, or you and your husband decided to end your marriage?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little about that?
I wasn't happy and hadn't been in a long time, and we had the discussion that we thought it was best that we go ahead and separate, and I had asked him to go ahead and find a place because I wanted to stay in the home with the kids, with both the kids, and he kind of looked. He said he was looking and he couldn't find a place, so I decided at that point I would go ahead and find a place to move out.
What time period is this?
I believe it was late March, early April 2000.
And how old would John have been then?
He would have just turned 18.
He graduated high school in
May.
In 2000, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
And so you said that was late March, early April that you and your husband had those discussions?
That's when I finally left, yes.
Oh, that's
ma'am.
when you left?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did you move to?
Moved to a small, it was on Cages Mountain Road in Hudson. We rented a place there.
Up until around this time period, had you and John remained close? Had your relationship remained close?
Yes. Mhm.
Did
Yes, ma'am.
your relationship with John begin to change?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
I think he was upset because I left.
What made you think that?
He didn't call or visit.
Would it be fair to say your relationship became strained?
Yes.
Were there other factors that you believed played a part in the straining of your relationship with John?
Well, Sara and I became friends because at one point in time I thought that she was going to be my daughter-in-law, and then they had a parting of the ways, so we kind of relied on each other at that point.
And Sara, I believe we've heard some testimony. Sara was a childhood friend of John's, is that right?
They were best friends.
And when did they become best friends?
I believe Jonathan was in 4th grade and Sara was in 5th grade.
And did she attend Harris Chapel as well?
Yes, ma'am. Her mother was one of the teachers there.
And they became best friends. Did the nature of their relationship change?
Yes, they decided they were best friends for years and then decided to date, and then
Do you remember approximately, I'm not holding you to a date, but do you remember approximately when that was that John and Sara decided to date?
I'm gonna,
But let me ask you this, was John still in school?
yes.
And I think you said that Sara was a year older.
Right.
Was Sara still in school when that happened?
Yes, I believe so, yes.
Approximately how long did John and Sara date?
Well, they'd been best friends since 4th and 5th grade. I'm going to say they probably dated a couple of years. I'm just trying, it seems like it's all together because they'd been best friends that whole time as well, so it's kind of hard to.
Sure. Okay. And so you mentioned that you believe that your relationship with Sara played a role in your and John's relationship becoming strained. Did the nature of your relationship with Sara, I think you said that you believed at one point that she was going to be your daughter-in-law.
Yes, ma'am.
How did that belief of yours change?
They had sort of, I guess, broke up. John decided that, that wasn't the way he wanted to go, that he was too young to be thinking about that. And
Do you remember again approximately when that was that they broke up?
I'm thinking it was like the fall of 1999. That's my best guess.
So this would have been shortly before you moved out of the house?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is, you mentioned earlier that you live with Sara. This is the same Sara, is that right?
Yes. And my daughter.
And your daughter, right.
Yes. We now live in Hudson.
At the time, you don't live in the same house you did when you first moved
No, ma'am.
out of the family home.
No, ma'am.
And have you lived with Sara continuously since you moved out of the home?
Well, she was living with her parents when I left the home, and she moved in later. It wasn't at the same time.
And is Sara married?
Yes. She's been married 5 years.
Did you become aware at some point that there were accusations that you had a romantic relationship with Sara?
Yes.
Are those accusations true?
No.
What is the nature of your relationship with Sara now?
We're best friends.
Do you believe that your relationship with Sara was one of the factors that contributed to the decline of your relationship with John over time?
I do.
I'd like to talk a little bit about your relationship with John and how it changed. I believe you said that you saw the beginning of the change or of the decline of your relationship with him around the time period or that you moved out of the home and got divorced. Is that right?
Correct.
Did things get better over the next few years?
No.
Did they get worse?
Yes, they didn't. They didn't improve.
Did you ever talk to him directly about your relationship and why it was strained?
No, not directly. I mean, I would make sure that he knew that when I was fixing like Christmas or whatever, that he was more than welcome to come and visit, and he did several times visit at Christmas, and I think three times at Mother's Day. I think John and Becky and I went out to eat for Mother's Day.
You said 3 times. Over what time period are we talking about?
From 2000.
Until these incidents occurred?
Yes.
When was the last time, prior to the events on April 22nd of 2013, when was the last time you had seen John?
I believe it was Christmas 2011.
Is there anything that stands out in your mind about that Christmas?
Well, he came over and was discussing working in Raleigh, you know, and that kind of thing. And he also told me that he had RA and was taking an injection every other week. The Enbrel injections every other week.
What is RA?
Rheumatoid arthritis.
And was that significant to you?
Yes, because I'd been diagnosed with it 2004, I believe, and I take the Enbrel injections every week.
Was that common knowledge that you had been diagnosed with RA in 2004?
Yes.
Had you discussed that with John, that you had been diagnosed with it?
I believe we had before, yes.
Had you discussed that you were taking Enbrel injections
Yes,
with John?
yes.
And you said that Christmas of 2011 was the last time you saw him prior to the events
Yes.
in April of 2013?
Yes, I spoke to him on the phone January when his grandmother passed away. I spoke to him on the phone.
In January of what year?
I believe that was 2013.
So you never saw him at all in 2012?
Not that I can remember.
Do you recall ever speaking to him on the phone in 2012?
Not that I can remember.
Do you know if John came to Lenore for Christmas in 2012?
Yes, he did come because my daughter Becky went over to her father's house, and I sent a gift over for Jonathan.
But you never saw him on his visit home that year?
No, ma'am, not that year.
Did you ever meet Nation Han?
I remember seeing him at church with Pat and David, but that's when he was younger, a lot younger.
Did you ever meet him once he and John became close friends?
Not that I remember.
What about Jamie Han? Did you ever meet her?
No, ma'am.
I'd like to talk briefly about you finding out about the events of April 22nd, 2013. Can you tell us about how you found out about what had happened?
Becky had received a call that night and came in and woke me up.
And what did you do?
We got up and got dressed and made sure we knew where we needed to go, and we drove to Raleigh.
What happened when you where did you go in Raleigh?
Wake Med.
And what happened when you got to Wake Med?
We found an entrance. It was about, I think it was around 1 o'clock in the morning, 12 to 1 o'clock in the morning, because it takes us about 3 hours to drive. And found the lady at the desk, and I explained to her who I was and why I was there. And she couldn't give me any information. And but she did call upstairs, and then an officer came down to the lobby and spoke to us. I believe do you need to know his name?
If you remember it.
I believe it was Sergeant Cashwell came downstairs and spoke to us.
And did you learn information that night about John's medical status?
He explained that he had been in surgery or was in surgery, and that he was going to be okay.
Did you learn anything else about any other medical diagnosis?
No.
Were you able to see John that night?
No, ma'am.
Were you able to talk to him?
No, ma'am.
Were you told of any diagnosis or asked about any diagnosis that John may have had?
The officer asked me if I knew John had pancreatic cancer, and I told him no, I did not know that.
Was that that diagnosis significant for you?
That's what my mother had passed away with, and Jonathan was very close to her.
When did your mother pass away of pancreatic cancer?
It was January 1992. Jonathan would have been 9, almost 10.
And what happened next after you realized you weren't going to be able to allow to see him?
The officer gave me his name and phone number, and I gave him my number, and he said he would stay in touch with me and for me to call him if I had any questions.
And what did you do after that?
We drove back home.
When was the next time you saw John?
July the 21st, 2013,
And where was he at that time?
Central Prison in Raleigh.
Why was there such a long delay? Why were you not able to see him until July?
You have to wait and have an application sent to you by the inmate. It has to be completed and mailed back in and then approved before you can be a visitor.
Had you corresponded with him by mail?
After I could find the address, yes, and the opus number that needs to be included with all that, yes, ma'am.
What was that visit like for you?
Well, mixed emotions. I was happy to see him and glad that he wanted to see us.
And I think you said that the last time you had seen him was December 2011?
Yes, ma'am.
How often were you able to see him after that July 21st of 2013?
We called for, at that point, he could have visitors on Saturdays and Sundays, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. I think there's certain times for certain areas of the prison, and so we called, and every opportunity that we could get to be able to be fit in, we came to visit. I came to visit.
How long was he at Central Prison?
I believe until June the 5th, 2014, he was moved to Craven Correctional.
And where is Craven Correctional?
That's in Vanceboro. That's near Newbern.
Okay. And how often did you see him once he was moved to Craven?
As often as we could get. At that point, he could have visitors on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, but to make arrangements so I could be off of work, we did the Friday visits, and so we would go every time that we could get in. It was a little more difficult there because of the limited number of visits allowed each week.
How would you describe your relationship with John now?
It's better than it has been in the last 15 years.
How often have you seen him since that first visit in July of 2013?
I keep track of that on my calendar, and I've had 41 visits with him.
May I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Well, just a few more questions. Going back to John's school, Harris Chapel, could you describe what that school was like? Is like?
They have a gymnasium and an educational building, and then part of the classrooms are upstairs, connected to the church, to the sanctuary. His graduating class, there were 3. He was the only boy, and then he graduated with 2 girls. It's a small school. They have a chapel service once a week on Wednesdays.
The students do?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, they do. It's small. It's a small school.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
It's part of the church. The church started it, and then of course you pay tuition, if you want to send your children there.
Okay. Does the class size fluctuate from year to year, just based on how many students enroll each year?
Yes.
And this is a private school, correct?
Yes.
So would it be correct to say that some years there could be 2 or 3 students, as in John's case, and then other years there could be 4 or 5?
Yes. I believe, the best I can remember, the largest graduating class was maybe 19 or 20, maybe.
Did John, when he was growing up, did he interact with kids from the public schools in Lenore?
Not unless there may have been some that he met when he started working. For the most part, it was the ones at the school or the ones at the church.
Okay. Ms. Broyhill, how would you characterize your relationship with your ex-husband at this point?
We don't communicate.
Has it been that way for a number of years?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination. All right. Thank you, ma'am. You may step down.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other witnesses available today?
Not today, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to recess for the afternoon at this time. I can give you a little bit of projection about the time. I anticipate that the evidence will conclude somewhere around midweek, and that there will be closing arguments, my instructions on the law, and then you'll be asked to deliberate this case. So I anticipate that it may well take the remainder of this week, but that's the best projection I can get to you right now, is that we're on track to conclude the evidence by midweek, and then we'll move into the next phases towards deliberation in the latter part of the week. Again, please recall all the instructions. Don't talk among yourselves or with anyone else about the case. Don't form or express opinions about the outcome. No media or independent investigation into these matters. Please have no conversation or communication with parties, witnesses, or lawyers. Thank you very much for your service on the jury, and please leave your notepads in your chairs. Everyone else, please remain seated while the jurors excuse themselves. Outside the presence of the jury, are there matters that we need to take up before we recess?
Not from the state, Your Honor.
When you anticipate not making a ruling on Dr. Hammer until tomorrow, Judge?
I'm going to begin working on it now, and I don't know how long it will take me to complete the research I need to complete. I'm happy to notify you as soon as I have a ruling.
I'm just asking, I may provide